Hello, today we're going to look at the basics of rounding. Now, before we start, I just must make clear that rounding has got nothing to do with making something into a round or a circle. We're not about to get a square and start bashing it to make it round. Rounding is all about changing numbers and moving them so that they are up to their nearest 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 and so on. And this is a useful thing to do, and we use rounding a lot when we are making approximations. Let me get straight into it and explain what I mean. So first of all, I'm just going to count up in tens. I'm going to start here and go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So here we are counting up in tens, and what I'm going to be looking at first of all is rounding to the nearest 10. So I'm going to choose a number. I'm going to choose 28. I'm going to put that in here, 28. And if I'm rounding to the nearest 10, I'll write that here. What I want to do is see which 10 it is nearest to, which is why it is called round to the nearest 10. So going back to my 28 here, I just have to think to myself, is it closer to 20 or closer to 30? And clearly 28 is closer to 30. So rounding to the nearest 10, 28 rounds up to 30. Let's do another one. Right, I'm going to go for 43. So I'll put 43 in here. Now again, looking at where 43 is, it's fairly clear to see that 43 is closer to 40 than it is 50. So therefore, rounding to the nearest 10, 43 rounds to 40. Here we go. 43 rounding to 40. And it works like this. If I've got 14, for example, which would go here. As you can see, 14 is closer to 10 than it is 20. So 14 will round to the nearest 10, will round to 10. Now, what happens if I'm exactly halfway? What happens if I have a number like 55? And this is really important because you'll come back to rounding. Rounding first appears in the national curriculum in year 4, but you come back to it in 5, 6, and of course all through secondary school. So going back to this, if you're 55, which is exactly halfway between 50 and 60, where do I go? Do I go down to the 50 or do I go up to the 60? And this is the really important bit. When it's at a 5, you always go up. So 55 will round up to 60. And once you've remembered that, you just have to think to yourself, is the number that I am rounding, is it nearer to the 10 below or is it nearer to the 10 above? So 43 is closer to 40, the 10 below. 28 is closer to 30, the 10 above, than it is the 10 below 20. And 14 is closer to the 10 below than it is the 20 above. Now we've had a look at these numbers along here, I'm just going to do some more examples. So let's write one here. So if I've got 128, so I'm rounding to the nearest 10. So it's either going to go to 120 or 130. And I look at the 8 and I can see that's closer to 130. So that is what it will round to. Or if I had 231, I'm rounding it either to 230 or up to 240. But in the units column I've got this 1, so I'm closer to 230 than I am to 240. So therefore I round 230. Rounding to the nearest 100 is exactly the same, apart from we're looking at a different place value column to round to. So let's have a look at this one. Now here I'd be counting up in hundreds. So let's just do this again. I'll go 0, 100, 200, 300, 400. Well, let's go up to 500. There we go. we'll choose a few numbers. So here I go, I'll put 36 in. Well, 36 is closer to 0 than it is 100, so I will round to 0. So 36 rounded to the nearest 100 in fact goes all the way down to 0. If I put in 254, well, that's just slightly over 250, so it's more than halfway and it will go to 300. So 254 goes to 300, and it will always be like this. 165 is closer to 200 than 100, so it will round up to 200. 165 up to 200. Now what if we're exactly halfway in the middle? What about if I'm here at 350? Am I going to go up to 400 or down to 300? Well, exactly the same as when I went in the nearest 10. If it's a 5, or in this case a 50, I will always go up. So 350 goes up to 400. So let's just try a couple more without using our chart. So if I had 628, well, that 28 is closer to 600 than it is 700, so it must stay at 600. 389 is closer to 400 than it is 300, so it will round up to 400. 750 is of course exactly halfway between 700 and 800, and so I will go up. I'll go up to 800, rounding to the nearest 100. Same with 150, that will go up to the next 100, which is 200. Now, as always with these videos, do go back, have a look again, have some practice examples yourself, and take it on. There's another video in the series which will move on from the basics of rounding in a system that will enable you to round any number to the nearest 10, 100,000, 10,000, 100,000 or million without any trouble at all. As always, all the best with your work, and it's easy when you know how.